Hey, hello. Welcome to the very first episode of the Update Night podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and I'm also the founder of the Update Night newsletter that I just launched a couple of days ago. So, the Update Night newsletter is a place where we dive into the undercover stories in the tech and business world that rarely makes the big headlines because these news outlets will never cover them unless it's a very big story, which is why I created Update Night to share some light on all these stories and undercovered tools that nobody really is talking about, and to really showcase some of the great works that the community is really making. And it's really fascinating finding some of these tools and resources that I come across all the time. It's amazing to see how small creators are really creative and really make really good open source products, for example. And these products are really well made. So I am an entrepreneur, a student, a creator who's been building, innovating, and chasing my dreams since I was 15. Back then, I launched a micro startup that reached over 470,000 users, which was where I first realized my passion for creating and making an impact. Well, since then, I've been obsessed with uncovering the hidden gems in the tech world. I just happen to always come across all these things because I'm always on the web. I come across different social media platforms with all these tech resources, and I just always come across all these discoveries and I always share with my friends. But people always ask me, like, where do I find all these things from? Which was why I actually created Update Night. But that wasn't the actual beginning because this started late last year, where I created a Discord community called Division Now. It's a space for tech enthusiasts to share all their finds, exchange ideas, and collaborate. It was just an experiment that I just started randomly one of the day. I just thought about it. Why not we create a space like this to share all these discoveries and compile it all together in one space, right? Because I was already sharing these tools and resources with my friends, and we're just making it bigger on a bigger scale in a Discord server where many people can just easily join and access to all these resources that I share. And it's really nice to have this space where all of these hidden gems are just compiled into one space where you can easily access and find whenever you need it. Really, some of these things are relatively new and not many people know about them yet. Some of the latest tools like Klein, which is a VS Code extension with agentic capabilities that can pretty much read your entire code base and edit and auto save different files and debug run terminal commands for you. Everything completely automated. This was one of the early finds that I have. And nobody really knew about this back then because it was a small project when it was just started. And it's only just recently that people realized how useful and valuable this free VS Code extension is, that people really loved it and just made it even better. And there's so many users on Klein now, and there's even a fork of this extension called RueKlein, which they recently renamed to RueCode, which they are somewhat competing with each other in terms of like making the extension even better. And it's a great competition to have, a great friendly competition to really make this extension or this agentic extension into what it to really unleash its maximum potential that we can actually have in a coding kind of suite. So the vision now is that Discord community that I started last year, and it has already reached 80 members today, and it's pretty incredible. I am pretty, as I said, this was a pretty random idea that I had, and I didn't expect it to go so well because all these finds like the client VS Code extension, if you can bring all these finds to the people out there faster, let people know all these really useful tools out there before they get viral, I think it'll be very good because we become the gateway into all these new viral, growing, evolving tools before everyone else does it. So you're actually sitting on the front row seat being one of the first few people to experience the next level of technology and really being there to support the early stages of these tools and startups or products. And it's really amazing. So back to Update Night. It's a newsletter that I just launched a couple of days ago, and this podcast is a very extension of that. So Update Night is a newsletter where we share all these tools in like a condensed format because we realize that the Discord community is rather scattered because I always post links, but there was feedback where it's very disorganized and it's a bit hard to find the tools you want. But the primary goal of the vision now is to make all these sharing of different tools that I find and what others find a lot easier than where you have to post it on a forum like a Reddit where it's you need to go through like post kind of form. We have to specify like certain tags or some sort of metadata for each post, and it makes the process so troublesome to just share something. Like the point of the vision now is to share your finds, and it's to make it as easy as possible. And that's the point of the Discord community, to make it very easy to share finds and find what other people are sharing. So it's a space specifically catered for that. And I don't plan to change it anytime soon into like a very nicely organized and very and categorized kind of format for every link that people post. And for a fact of the matter, most of the things is posted by me because that was the whole point of creating this Discord community. So Update Night aims to solve that by condensing all these information on a weekly newsletter where I will compile all of the great finds and news from that week, and I will just summarize them in a very nice and consumable, digestible format that you can easily read, where I'll include all the links inside, and everything will be included inside of the newsletter, the links and some of my short thoughts on it. You can find it on each week's newsletter issue that will be delivered straight into your inbox. So just drop your email. If you go to updatenight.com right now, you can go ahead and subscribe by just simply adding your email address there, and then that's it. From there on, you'll receive the upcoming weekly issues of all these tech news. And on top of that, I also share my personal experiences from building startups as an entrepreneur myself. And these are essentially 2 issues per week, simply delivered straight into your inbox. Nothing for you to do. It's so easy. You just read it straight from your inbox. And this is so much value that I'm providing here because I'm doing all the hard work. I'm hard lifting all the hard work here and combining, condensing, summarizing everything into this format. So if you're interested, definitely go to updatenight.com right now and put in your email address, and you will definitely receive the upcoming issues in your inbox straight away. So back to the podcast that you are listening to right now. Maybe you are on Spotify or YouTube, and we are planning to make this available on Apple Music as well. So if you're on Apple Music, hey, hello. So this podcast is an extension of the Update Night newsletter. And we actually go into more detail for each of the topics that we cover in each week's issues, like the tech news and the personal stories that I share on my entrepreneurship. So I'll just go through the newsletter and I will just provide more detailed thoughts that come to mind when I see the actual topic that we will be discussing. So these will be rather unfiltered and hopefully not much to edit because I don't want so much work to edit every single week when I'm already producing so much content every week just for my YouTube channel. And I haven't mentioned it yet, I am also a creator on YouTube. Basically, I upload tech videos sharing experiences on my entrepreneurship, my tech startup that I just recently incorporated in this year. So a lot of content is being planned and scheduled for this year alone just for the YouTube channel side. So having this podcast and the newsletter is double extra things to do on top of just producing content for the YouTube channel itself. And this podcast is also on YouTube. As I said, this is a separate channel on its own channel on the Update Night Podcast YouTube channel. You can search it up right now. It will be on YouTube. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, you can see a YouTube video form version of this podcast as well. And it depends on how you want to consume it, right? Maybe you are listening to this podcast right now at home while you're cooking, doing chores, or maybe you're just lounging on a sofa, or maybe you're at work, or you're at the gym exercising, or maybe this is hopefully maybe part of your bedtime routine, something that provides value that you listen to before you sleep. And I find it the most value where I read or listen to podcasts while I'm on the go, because when you're on the go, it's so much time wasted, just gone to nothing. Most people scroll TikTok, Instagram while on the train. In fact, everyone does that. But I'm one of those very few people that reads a Kindle, my Kindle on the train or on the bus when I'm on the go, because my travel time each day to school is like 2 hours and back and forth is 4 hours. So I'm making use of this 4 hours on while I'm traveling to school and back from school by making use of this time to actually gain knowledge and wisdom from reading books that are really good at selling, teaching you what they are made for. And this really makes the time very useful and productive while you're on the go. And hopefully, this podcast will be one of those things that will help hopefully inspire you to start your own thing, inspire you to create your own project that you can actually sell to people. We live in a world where we don't really have enough people that are innovative, creative, and doing things that will really improve and bring society to a better future faster than we should be. Because most people, right, will go the standard route of going to college and going to a nicely paid salaried job. But not many, in fact, most are afraid to start on their own venture, like entrepreneurship, to trying out something new, something that you can provide value and make the world a better place by doing something good, making something like even this just this podcast alone. I did this for a reason to inspire people and bring this tech news weekly thing to more people out there, making all these hidden gems accessible to more people rather than having all these things gate kept under the rug that only those few people that knows about it will ever know about it until someone releases, tells everyone about it, then more people will know about it. So this podcast and the newsletter is a gateway for that, to ungatekeep all of these things. And for my personal experiences, I'm sharing them to inspire viewers, not viewers, audience, listeners like you to hopefully do something good, because I personally really admire people who really commit to do something that they can tie their name to it, something they hold their name to. If you think about a brand like Apple, you will just think of the person, the founder, the creator, Steve Jobs, right? Because he was the original creator of Apple and he just made such a big impact on the world just from his he brought to this world. So we really need more people like that in this world, considering the fact that we have 7 to 8 billion people on this planet. And if we can just increase the amount of people that can start their own venture and try out something that benefits society in general. And actually, more people are doing that already. Like, people are starting their own ventures on TikTok, TikTok selling their own merchandise, their t-shirts, their bags. A lot of people are actually starting their own things because people are realizing that it's very difficult to get out of the rat race, and it's something that everyone will do, and there is really no value in life if you were to just work for every day in the rest of your life until you retire, having a very comfortable salary and just get that salary every month without anything to worry about is a comfort zone, as many people say. It's somewhere where you want to be comfortable and you can't escape it. Because if you want to grow, the place to grow is not inside the comfort zone, but outside of it. And to get out of the comfort zone is never in a salaried job. Because it might not be easy to be in a salaried job either, to work so many hours, being forced to told what to do. But at the end of the day, everything is hard. Every job, every specialist, every field, nothing is easy in this world. And it's just very, if you think about it, it's the same if you apply this concept into entrepreneurship. It's the same level of difficulty. You figure out everything on your own as you figure it out in your job. So technically, there's not much difference. But I think it's the society pressure that makes it difficult to escape from this concept or mindset. It's not easy, but if you just take a little step a day, you definitely can reach an outcome eventually. But the problem is, many things in life have delayed outcomes. For example, things like running, working out, you really don't see the result until like maybe like a few months, half a year, or a year later. Most of the things in life is like that. And it's really difficult to commit, be disciplined, to really keep going, do these things that you have to do consistently on whatever daily, weekly basis. It's difficult. And I've been through that. It's difficult. Nothing in this world is easy either. So if you just take a little step a day at a time, you will believe that you will see some results in the future. Even if it all goes down to shit, nothing works out, it's actually not that bad either. You actually get the experience as well. After you have failed, what you get is experience and the lesson. It's not, don't walk out with nothing. This is not a lose lose. No matter what, if you succeed, you will get something out of it. If not, you take the lessons, the experiences that you went through from this project or whatever you're doing, and apply it into whatever is next for you. You can go back to your job, or you will have now a resume full of experiences they can show to your next employer if you are willing to go back to a salaried job, if that's what you want to do, being part of a bigger company and being a small screw that connects and is part of a bigger system that creates a overall big impact on the world, but you're just a tiny screw in the system. Well, that's not really for me because I'm more of someone who really wants to be the one who is in charge of what I want to do, and I want to be the system itself. And yeah, it's definitely not easy. So we yapped too much on that part. Anyway, back to this podcast itself. So I am a content creator myself on YouTube. I've uploaded travel vlogs, tech videos, but tech videos not as much, and some of the business sites, entrepreneurship content, um, lessons, and hopefully more of those content will be available soon on the YouTube channel as well. So this podcast is a much more detailed, a lot more information in this podcast where you can listen on the go. So the YouTube channel will perhaps cover some of the newsletter, some of the tech news weekly issues. But I did record like an episode of that for the very first issue of the newsletter. And because that week the news was so much, there was so much news. In fact, in just the AI space alone, I recorded that video and it was like 2 hours long. And this podcast will probably be that long as well, but I will try to keep it short. It's so long, there's so much news to cover, and I just decided that I just dump away after 2 hours of recording nonstop just for that YouTube video that I wanted to publish out on the tech news. It's a waste, but I'm not sure whether if there is a way we can go around this where we can upload the news that we issue that we send on the newsletter on my YouTube channel as well. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe if those weeks where there are lesser news, we can cover them on my channel as well. Or maybe we can create individual videos, specially focusing on different topics that are really breaking. And in fact, if the topics are breaking, it's not really the whole point of update night anymore, right? Because the whole point of update night was to ungatekeep and share all these hidden resources, tools to the wider audience, which is through this new channel of reaching a wider audience, like listeners, readers like you, to hopefully make these tools more accessible to more people, and in exchange, helping these developers of these things, these tools, by having their tool to a wider reach of audience completely for free, because we are sharing all of them here without a paywall. We are helping them reach a wider audience. We are helping them reach a wider audience all for free through this channel called Update Night. And this is a really great thing that I think and I hopefully think I created. And so back to this podcast, this is a very different format from what I'm used to, because on my YouTube channel, I create business, entrepreneurship, tech content, as well as travel vlog content. And this format in a podcast, I don't have a camera sticking to my face all the time when I'm filming. This is completely free form. I don't have anything. This is all unfiltered, mostly, hopefully unedited, and I can just really edit and put in clips whenever I want. Because if you want to edit a video like a face cam, you have to be wearing the same shirt. If you want to add in like something maybe is missing in some part of the clip, or maybe it was corrupted or something like that, this is so much easier. Like I can just add in clips here and there, and you probably have not noticed that this was actually a lot of different cuts. I filmed it on many different days. This wasn't filmed on a single day because this is just the first episode. I'm just trying it out. Hopefully, we can have this done in like a single sitting from now on, which is the whole point of a podcast. So, hopefully, soon we will have all these podcast episodes produced and no edits required, all in one sitting, and we can just easily upload. And we, if it's the case, we can do a weekly upload. If we can do that, so we will have to see. This is definitely a different format from what I'm used to, and I honestly quite love it because it's quite satisfying to have like a long form content where I can just keep talking about things that I like and just expanding on my thoughts further than what I can actually expand on YouTube, because it's a rather short attention span on YouTube if it's those kind of videos where it's like maybe if you are making vlogs, there's very short attention span. Generally, videos have a, a curve down slope of the people who are still watching the video after like a certain amount of minutes. Towards the end, it's usually like very little and usually a lot in like the first 5 seconds, which is why most people are hooking your attention in the first 5 seconds to get your attention to keep watching the video. And you have to keep doing that. You have to keep catching your audience attention for the whole video. And that isn't really the intention of the podcast because I can keep talking on this podcast without having to worry about the length of each episode, where I can talk for 1-2 hours, which is the standard length duration of each podcast episode. And I've seen podcasts of like 2-3 hours, but I think the really tolerable maximum for anyone is really, I think, 2 to 2.5 hours. So I'll definitely keep my episodes below that. So if you were to produce like normal YouTube videos, it has to be within like 10-15 minutes. And I've seen the that I posted on my channel, the ones that are like 30-40 minutes. Really, nobody watches them. Like the views are so low. It feels like anyone who sees like the duration of a YouTube video is like 30-40 minutes. And if the first few minutes are not engaging enough, they won't watch further. And that's the problem with that. So this is a platform where I can just keep talking, no filters, all my thoughts, just dump it out here on everything. And it especially suits the tech news situation as well. And all my personal stories, it's a great platform to do that, which was actually the reasons why I wanted to start a podcast together with the Update Night newsletter that I just launched a couple of days ago. So, all right, enough on the introduction, and we should actually move on to the podcast itself, the main content of this podcast, which is actually the main reason why you tuned in to this podcast, right? So, the very first episode of this podcast, the main reason why you are here is the first issue of this entire thing that Update Night is all about. So, the tech news roundup for the last week. This is currently the week nearing the end of January. Hopefully, you are enjoying the end of January so far. January has been such a long month. It feels like there's so many weeks in this month. Like, we are finally getting into February. So, a summary and roundup of the news from last week. So, a lot of news this week to cover. Really, so many news. And everything is just so important that I have just to include everything because that's the point. I don't want to miss out on anything. Anything I see that I feel like it's important, I should include, I will include it in. And hopefully, most of it will be useful and good no. But of course, everything will not be like mandatory to know some things. In fact, like it depends on what field you are in, right? If you are like a developer, then the developer news will be useful for you. The design stuff will be useful for designers. So we are covering like a very wide area of a target audience. So let's just get started. So the big picture, or rather the big headlines that we have this week, and people are talking about this. So we know that TikTok was banned in the US, and a couple of hours later it got unbanned. But that was all that the headlines were covering. So this was rather under the radar, but people knew about this launch. So ByteDance released their own ID. It's called Shrey, And of course, what IDE in 2025 does not have AI features integrated as their core or main selling point of the IDE itself? And pretty much all IDEs, so-called IDEs, are like forks of VS Code nowadays. We don't really have like a actual fully featured IDE anymore. Like I don't remember when was the launch. So Trey, this is by ByteDance. Of course, people are calling it by TikTok. Pretty much they are technically the same thing. So this is by ByteDance. And I believe from what it seems, TikTok developers are using this IDE to develop TikTok. If this is what I am correct, but I read this on somewhere, but I can't exactly find where is the source now. It might be just some YouTuber claiming that. But this is a pretty cool IDE to be honest. It's of course the AI features I've not tried it out myself, but from what it seems, it looks pretty good. And it has all the AI models completely for free. The best part is it's free, but it's only available on Mac right now. My primary workflow is on Windows, so all most of the developer things I do it on Windows unless it's like a school kind of thing and there's exams or things like that. I have to have the thing configured on my Mac so that I'm ready, I'm used to the environment so that I know unexpected surprises during the exam. So those things I'll do on my Mac, and for my work and my part time, I also do it on my Mac. But I personally don't really like Mac that much. I really find it so intuitive and really it's just so smooth and fluid to just code and do anything on Windows. It's just so flexible. I feel like it's so restrictive on Mac. Anyway, that's not the point. So, not available on Windows yet. We don't really have a date for that. But they have a wait list, of course. Just enter your email and hopefully you'll get a invite soon for Windows and hopefully I can get a video trying this out. Maybe perhaps on my Mac to see how well this is. Especially because it's free. Like the whole point nowadays is if there's a free agent agentic enough assist coding for your coding workflows, it definitely will be the talk of the town. Everyone will be using it if it is good, of course. If the quality is there, if it doesn't like just steer off like whatever it wants, it definitely has to achieve the objectives that the user is asking for. And it seems to be pretty well. It's like it's providing the Claude 3.5 Sonnet model for free, which is the most powerful model to pretty much build entire code bases using just this model alone. It's so far I've used the client extension using the Claude 3.5 Sonnet model, and I've spent like around $100 using this, and it's honestly it's so expensive. This is such an expensive model, and to have it free now in this IDE, this is pretty insane, which is actually why a lot of people are talking about this, considering it's free and I believe unlimited usage of the model. So it looks pretty good right now. It looks pretty similar to the client VS Code extension that builds directly into VS Code itself. But I really like the user interface that they have showcased here. It's super clean and super nice. It doesn't look like a VS Code fork at all. Really nice ID released by TikTok, but really don't know like what's the reason behind releasing this IDE, right? Because it's a really random announcement from ByteDance. They just randomly dropped this IDE, and it just so happened that we don't know the reason why they are doing this for free. Like what? is the point of doing it for free when all these models are so expensive? So we won't know until maybe it gets developed further, more people use it, and maybe they will drop a price tag on it. So we will see how it goes. Hopefully we get the Windows version very soon. And this is not the only thing that they released this time. It was another thing. It's an agent for your desktop. So they released the model, which is called UI TARS, and there's also a interface for that model. So it's completely local. I believe you can run the model locally on your desktop, and the interface will interact with the model to basically do like the computer use and your computer. But this is, I believe, it's a fully local model to perform tasks on your desktop for you. But I really still really get what is the use case for such agents, because from what it seems, it's so slow. And for those models that are on the cloud, you're paying for an API to call the computer use for the agent to interact with a user interface. It feels pretty stupid. Like, this is an analogy I would like to make is those self-driving cars right now. It's that exactly on driving on the roads, but we have agents with eyes navigating around websites. It feels pretty stupid. Like, why not we make the internet fully API and let all these agents interact with APIs instead, rather than having them interact with a user interface? Because so far there hasn't. I've never seen any really good use case of having agents in any workflow at all, for that matter, any use case at all. Really, it's so slow and expensive to make an agent search up the weather for you. Go and order this for me. Like, when you can do it yourself faster and for free, why would you want an agent or want to do that for you? So we will have to see how it goes. Definitely, if it is faster and it can be smarter, it can do more complex tasks, which I've not seen anyone use an agent for these complex things before. If there is any video on that, maybe someone can link me on that and I can check it out. But so far, I've not seen any, and I just don't really find any potential in these right now. Other than it's a very nice introduction into interactive agents with user interfaces. We will have to see how these agents develop. Hopefully, they will become more useful one day. And definitely, we are going towards a future where we are making these LLMs agents into real life rather than having them isolated into just a computer interface. And definitely, it's pretty scary considering there's a lot of news on how they behave like a human in just an isolated environment, and what makes us think that they wouldn't perform any malicious task with a human robotic kind of body. So we will have to see progress. So far, I'm not very convinced with the use case of such agents with interactive with user interface interactions. So Instagram made a really random, and it feels like it's very random to just change something that's not broken. So they made the profile grid on Instagram from a square aspect ratio to a 4, I believe it's a 4 by 3 grid. So it now looks like a very normal photo, because the photos nowadays we take is 4 by 3 or either 9 by 16, which is for the Instagram stories, right? So it looks very normal. But it just feels weird. What is the reason behind this change when it's not broken? The original square format was perfectly fine. Why did they have to make this change? And I think it doesn't really affect most users. It only affects those people who you makes like those mosaic effect where they utilize like the 9 by 9 grid on the profile, and they make this very large image, like a collage image, where the different parts of the different grids form up a bigger image. And this really affected those posts because it's not a different aspect ratio. So definitely it looks completely different. And from what it seems, it only affects these posts. Normal posts, I agree that there is some really, it takes a while to get used to it. But if you only post normal photos, I think it still looks okay. But if you are posting like maybe artwork, definitely it will look a bit weird because you have pretty much, if you created a square artwork, it will definitely look weird on a 4 by 3 grid now. So definitely good reasons to get um upset about this random decision. Yeah, still don't know what is this for. And especially on Instagram web, the website version of the Instagram, it's actually the original version. It's the square aspect ratio. So there's so much inconsistency with this. It's as if they will just roll back anytime because the web version is still a square. And maybe once they have confirmed that they want to finalize this decision, they will change the web one to the same 4 by 3 ratio. So on the mobile Instagram app as well, there's just a very large space on the right side of the profile where you actually see your name, the number of posts, followers, and number of people you are following. It's like a very giant gap on the right side now. I don't understand what is this gap for. Like, is it like for a future, some sort of statistic, a new number to show on the profile? Because it's just a giant gap now. There's no reason for the gap to be there. And it's such a horrible UI change where the old design was just, it occupies the entire space of that width of the page, which was perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. And now they reduce the width of this three statistic, these three numbers into like such a small width and font size that it looks weird. There's a huge space on the right now. And Instagram launched a new CapCut competitor because TikTok, while they were going to get banned, there was a rumor that CapCut was going to get banned along with it. So, riding on this opportunity, they announced their competitor. It's called Edits. So, it's not out yet, but it will release on March the 13th, which is quite a while from now. That's 1.5 months away from now. So, we don't know whether it will actually stand up to CapCut's capabilities because having used CapCut for my editing workflow myself, I believe CapCut is pretty good at what it does. There's so many useful tools and effects that you can use all built in out of the box. You don't even have to configure a lot of the things. A lot of the things are made so easy for even the most normal users who aren't editors. Anyone can now produce a very nice video, well edited video nowadays, just using CapCut alone. And it's such a great video editor. And I'm not sure if this new app from Instagram will really help or stand up to what CapCut has evolved to this stage right now today. And the brand of CapCut, a lot of people are using CapCut nowadays. So we'll have to see. It seems like the edits editor from Instagram is maybe just special. Of course, it will be like a TikTok, very tight to CapCut, very closely tied. Edits, of course, will also be very tight closely to Instagram, very nicely integrated. But we have to see what they have to offer. So far, not many information information revealed about this app. So we have to see when it launches in March. And yeah, back then in the pre-TikTok era, we don't have all these useful, easy to use tools. We only have After Effects, Premiere, Vegas Pro. All of these were like so manual. It's very old and it's so much effort to do even a single transition. What the heck? Now it's so easy, just drag and drop. It's built into CapCut. And mobile editing has become so powerful. Last time, there was pretty much, it was non existent on mobile back then for any video editing apps. All the workflow for editing videos is all on desktop. And at some point, we have these video editors ported to mobile, and it has made video production is so easy. You don't even need a desktop or a laptop to produce videos right now. Anyone can just edit, record videos on their phone. Everything can be done on your phone. You don't even need an entire setup right now. It's so cool and amazing that we have so much computing power on our mobile phones now. So ChatGPT, they just announced tasks, which are essentially cron jobs that run at a specific time and interval. So it's interesting that they are killing more startups as usual with their usual updates. Every update, eventually, your startup will be killed if you are wrapping around them. So we haven't really seen any useful use case for this yet. Because so far, it has all been automating some simple tasks like send me a news summary of like the past day, and they will just email you, and you have to click on the link to open ChatGPT, and it will be a message there on the summary. So it's still pretty locked in into ChatGPT's interface. So people have come up with use cases for it. I've not seen anything complex or really mind blowing that I'm so shocked that this is a very revolutionary feature yet. If you have one, if you have come across one, just let me know, and I will definitely cover it in a upcoming issue. So far, nothing much from this announcement, honestly. So Bun released a major update, and the thing that people are talking about is the support for S3 API natively. It's pretty clean to call the S3 API natively from Bun, and from the performance benchmark, it looks a lot faster than you are using the S3 package from Amazon. So pretty good. They are doing a lot of work in improving the runtime and making this widely more available to more users. But personally, I'm just very tired of getting into very weird compatibility issues with some of the packages, getting this runtime to run on the framework. And as I said, my primary workflow is on Windows. It's the Windows support is still very wonky, and it's just not really there. So I'm pretty excited if they have a very solid support for Windows soon. And there are people who are already using this in production, but not sure. I can't confirm if there are a lot of people or like what is the actual numbers. It seems promising. Definitely, it will take a while more for this to be widely adopted by more people. But for now, it's a good start. It's good to have a competition, a replacement for Node.js, which is notoriously slow for some of the tasks. So Oracle has a very powerful and generous free tier. It's shared by this YouTuber called Cyberflow, which I came across on YouTube. It was in my what is that called? The recommended feed. So I went to his video, and it's apparently a lifetime free. We've all heard of Amazon, Google Cloud, Azure free tier, right? This is unlimited because the ones we all know is all limited. After 1 or 2 years, the credits expire and you can't use it anymore. This is for a lifetime. But I've not gotten it to try myself yet because I kept running into weird issues when registering for an account because Malwarebytes kept blocking the cookie consent pop up and I just can't use the page at all. So I've heard that this server is also quite limited and there is like a limited supply for it. So you have to try your luck and see if you can get it. So if you're interested, definitely go to the newsletter article and you will find the link to this Oracle Cloud where you can try it out for yourself. So Samsung just unveiled their S25 series, but what nobody is talking about is the Edge model that they teased at the event. They said that this is the thinnest phone ever made, but we don't have the exact numbers. So we don't know how thin is it. But from the shots that people took, it doesn't look that thing like it looks like a very standard kind of Samsung phone thickness, but it's just slightly thinner. It doesn't look as thin as what I would imagine if they say it's like the thinnest model, the thinnest phone that they have ever made. And Apple is also rumored to announce a new model in the iPhone lineup, which is called the iPhone 17 Air, which is essentially something like that, the thinnest iPhone ever made. Of course, we don't really have anything official yet. It's all rumors. So I believe the S25 Edge will be a phone, a model that will be released sometime this year as well, considering it's the part of the S25 series. So Tremor has joined Vercel. Vercel acquired Tremor recently, and Tremor is actually quite a well-known library for like making dashboard components like the charts. And this acquisition has made all the paid blocks and components free and open source good. Like we have access to all these really nice and great dashboard components completely for free now. And this was actually the library that a lot of people went to because when ShadCN UI came out, they don't really have really good support for charts yet until they recently, a few months ago, they added support for charts using Recharts, which is also a really good library. They did the implementation really well. And you can use both of these interchangeably. Of course, it's really nice to have this for free now. I definitely recommend you to check it out if you're building like dashboards of or like admin viewing panels. We have to see different stats or like for users, definitely Tremor is a good library to go. But ShadCN UI charts is not lacking behind either. So Expo recently announced their hosting service for the React Native Server API routes, which they recently announced support for API routes only last year. So you can now host these API routes for your React Native app through Expo directly. And the support for it seems very seamless and easy. Of course, it has to be easy for people to adopt it. So we have come into this era where mobile apps are not necessarily fully native anymore because a lot of the apps are now built with React Native and a lot of the code is now on JavaScript. So we realize that these JavaScript parts of the code base can be directly shipped over through the air without having to go through manually through the Apple Store and the Google Play Store because those are so manual. The approval process takes about 1 to 2 days. If you have like a very freaking bug that you really have to fix for all your users, you can't get it out quickly and you can't guarantee that everyone will update their app if they don't have the auto update on. They will have to manually go and update the app in order to receive the bug fix or some security flaw that you have in the app. And we keep the mobile native code untouched. Those still have to be deployed through the store. But having this flexibility of shipping the JavaScript side from the server to the all of your end users makes it so easy to deploy updates to your app now. It makes the mobile development less rigid, more flexible, and so much easier to update user interfaces, features, introduce all these things to end users as soon as possible without having to go through the very tedious and manual process of App Store approvals and Google Play Store approvals. So a pretty nice change from Expo themselves. Definitely have to try out their hosting service if you are building a React Native mobile app with several API routes. All right, let's move on to the AI news this week. There's again so many news in the AI space alone every single week. But of course, not everything is important. There's so much hype from all the new model launches, the benchmarks, the new AI integrated IDE forks. At this point, we have a new model release and a new IDE fork release every single week. But we won't cover all of them. So these are mostly the important things that I wanted to include. So a lot of development in the AI agent space. Everyone is now building a startup on that. It was the ChatGPT era, now is the agent era. But it's so oversaturated now. Everyone is doing it. But Microsoft and Google are leading this. Of course, they are well known and it's so integrated with their ecosystem, the Google Workspace, Google Drive, Microsoft Word. All of these will be integrated very nicely into agents. So it's a bit difficult to compete with them in the agent space. But of course, if you have a very nice niche on integrating with many other different platforms rather than just the ecosystems themselves, each of these companies are doing, you definitely have a good base that you can work out from. But yet, we are still so many years away from AGI, even from this development of agents. And there are still a lot of AI wrappers getting built every single day. Nothing wrong if you are building an AI wrapper. If you are actually providing value and people actually want to use it, people think this is such a useful tool, they can't live without it, nothing wrong with it. But if you're just copying what everyone else is doing, then what is the point of it, right? The best bet right now is integrating AI with everything else. And that's what everyone is doing. Like an AI fridge. Like, why the heck do we need AI in a fridge? An AI mouse, and we charge a subscription for people using an AI mouse. That's not really the main problem. The main problem is we need to pay credits for using them or a monthly subscription. Like, why the heck do I need to pay a monthly subscription to my mouse or my fridge? Like, we are turning AI into this very commercialized. You're just making money off it any way that you can by integrating everything into it, charging everything that you own into a subscription. AI in itself is actually very amazing at the very foundation because it's just a very, very complex if else, right? It's just a very nested, complex if else that we really can't see because it's a black box. It can do such complex thinking from this alone. And I think the human brains work pretty similar to this. And we are in fact just replicating how our human brains think because when we speak, when we think each word at once based on what we know of the previous thoughts, the sentence that we have formed. And it's actually the same thing that we're doing this with the transformers architecture of AI. But the problem with AI is that we are trying to find a use case for everything. We're trying to fit AI into everything that we can think of to see if it works. The thing is, AI right now works really well as a human assisted tool to speed up the productivity of humans. It is just still not good enough to be fully autonomous to do anything on its own yet. It doesn't have a human body, it doesn't have access to your whole computer. You don't trust it enough to give your entire computer access to an AI model that you don't even know what is it thinking. Of course, you will trust another human to do something on behalf of you by giving them a salary or some commission, right? Of course, we really have not reached that stage yet where we can fully entrust all these robots, LLMs, AIs to fully do everything on its own. It still has to be partially human assisted. And most of the workflow is assisting humans with their daily workflows, like ChatGPT. If you need something like drafting an email, ask ChatGPT. It's helping you, but you are still the person who makes the end decision. What is the final email that you want to send to the recipient? So I really want robots, AI, to be smart and really good enough to be fully autonomous at some point. And definitely that's the end goal. We are all heading towards there. And I want it to be able to build and deploy an entire system on its own. Devin, it was promising, but there was just so much hype and marketing that I think it really didn't deliver from what everyone expected because it's slow and it just didn't fulfill everyone's expectations. And from its price, really doesn't justify the price for its performance. So there is still a lot of human in the loop required, and I can say this for sure, it won't take over jobs soon. I really, if it can take over jobs soon, it will be those simple jobs like those admin jobs where there's a lot of very manual tasks. Of course, very critical jobs like banking and finance, those will take many years. In fact, until we can really have a robot behind it, because we really can't trust these things, especially in the finance side, to these robots that we don't even know what they're thinking of. And there's just so many proof out there that it's really unreliable. We can't really rely on them on their output. Their output is so inconsistent. We can't consistently ensure what outcome they will produce. So on the big news, we have Project Stargate which is a joint venture between some of the big companies in the US like OpenAI, Oracle, and mainly it's the US government that's investing a large portion of it into this project here, which is a joint venture to making AGI closer, mainly the research to bring AGI closer to us. We are definitely still far from it, but this is very um very big project from the US alone, and it seems that the fact that it's backed by the US, I wonder like how much of it actually goes into the project itself than the salaries of the people who are actually working on it, or like taxes and stuff. It's a lot of money being poured in for this project, and it's called Project Stargate. We don't have much details except that this is a joint venture between these companies, and it's to bring forward AGI research. Now, we already know that OpenAI is being infamously closed source despite its name. We don't know like what is the extent of this project, whether it'll be some profitable project. Especially it's so much money backed into this, right? Of course, we will have to see. We don't know what is going to be the outcome of this yet. It's just the start. We are still at the starting line. Hopefully, we'll get to AGI sometime soon, and this will be one of the projects, one of the meaningful projects that will help us to get us closer to AGI. Hopefully, sometime before 2030. That's a very um how do I say optimistic timeline to before 2030, especially when we are just 5 years away. And considering the current rate of developments, we could get there soon, but we really have to see, because I really think that we really need to transform the underlying architecture, which is the Transformers one, to get us closer to there. Unless if we don't do that, then it's a bit difficult, because right now we are doing a lot of just test time compute or inference time scaling. And definitely we are bound to hit a limit at some point. So Klein, which I did talk about at the beginning of the podcast here, It's a VS Code extension for which has agentic capabilities to do pretty much everything on your IDE. It's a pretty good extension. I really highly recommend it because a lot of people are using this extension already. This you can plug in any model as you want. You can specify whatever API provider, models, LLMs. You can even provide your own locally hosted model on your computer as a backend for this extension to do really cool things like reading your entire code base, having context to your entire code base, knowing what your code does, being able to write certain functions, modify code within specific parts of the file without just rewriting the whole file, and saving them, creating new files, running terminal commands, debug for you, see the browser using the cloud computer use. It's a really very nice extension that pretty much can help developers speed up their workflow a lot faster in terms of like especially those very manual and simple tasks. But I've used this extension for very heavy and, to be honest, not very widely tested and used use cases like doing browser extensions and building desktop apps using Electron. Those are not very well tested, and I feel like they can perform quite well at those, but they aren't very good at it yet because all these LLMs are really, to be honest, I feel like they are made to build web apps. In terms of like mobile apps, Chrome extensions, desktop apps, I feel like they are still quite dumb at it. They don't really have much knowledge on it, like especially on like very low level kind of code, like assembly language, Rust. It's it keeps getting difficulty like getting the things right. It just has sometimes just steers away from what it is supposed to do. And I feel like we have come to a point where the models are so cheap now that this extension was actually initially built for Claude Sonnet 3.5. And it's actually optimized for that. The prompts are specially optimized for that model, but you can definitely use this with a lot of the other models. And we already have a new model called the DeepSeek, which I'll cover later on. And they have a really powerful model that comes on par with the Sonnet 3.5 Sonnet 3.5 model. And it's like more than like less than half the cost of the Sonnet model with like almost the same level of performance, which is really great, especially in like a agentic workflow. We have a lot of different steps that it has to go through for like reading the code base. It's just a step alone. It counts as an API call. It really reduces the cost a lot for using these agentic VS Code extensions, especially when you are the one paying the API costs rather than having to pay a company on behalf and they provide you the API costs and they provide you the LLM models where they're the one paying for it. So it's really promising. There's a lot of great updates to Klein, and one of it is they've reversed the way that they can use the GitHub Copilot, the models from it, and use it as a proxy for Klein, which is pretty cool. Like you don't even have to pay for API costs anymore. You can just directly proxy your Sonnet 3.5 model through your GitHub Copilot extension subscription, which is, I believe it's unlimited, but there should be some sort of rate limit that you can hit. But so far, it seems like I've not really tested it yet. I've done some very light testing on it, and it seems pretty snappy and really nicely integrated into the VS Code GitHub Copilot extension. So it's very promising. So many great updates from Klein. And I feel like It's a really nice extension that I really recommend everyone to get if you are willing to pay for the API cost, especially it's actually that cheap to use it. And if not, if you can just now utilize the GitHub Copilot extension to do all this for you and just pretty much just try it out and see if it works for you. And hopefully it will do something and increase your productivity in your workflows in your day to day. So at the end of the last year, I also built a reverse API, something similar to this, which is a reverse API endpoint running on a Python server that exposes an API endpoint for a client, which it can use to call custom backend providers, right? Which I mentioned just now. So you can actually call this Python backend using the client extension. And it pretty much just proxies all the requests from a client into GitHub Copilot, which is pretty much the same thing as we are doing now. So it's pretty cool that it's now integrated by default into the extension itself. Pretty cool. And they actually have like a fork. Someone forked the client extension. It was called Rue Client, but they renamed it to Rue Code now. Maybe to differentiate better, like it's not actually the same thing. So they actually released a lot of the great big features like the architect mode, the planning mode, where they actually don't do any actions on your code base, but only actually do the planning part first. And you can actually set up different roles and stuff like that. And some of these stuff actually got inspired by the original client, and it was also integrated with the original client extension. Things like auto approve, which was such a useful feature because it makes the entire thing completely autonomous without any human in the loop at all. It makes this whole thing becoming an actual autonomous coding assistant. Rather than an assistant, it becomes a fully autonomous agent that can write entire code bases on itself, debug itself, and just pretty much get the whole thing done by itself because it has access to all these different tools to debug and run terminal commands to figure out what is wrong with the code base. So it's a really nice thing to have this frog that this creator has come up with. It's making a really friendly competition to client themselves, making both extensions very nicely, very nicely improving at as it should to realize its maximum potential. So a lot of the features I would say is usually it's the fork that comes up with it first, and then later on the original extension will sort of do something similar. Want do port over some of the really nice features. I would say I use these two extensions quite interchangeably because it depends on what features they have, right? Sometimes Rue Code does it better. Sometimes Client does it better. So it really depends on which one can do the work well. And I just try whichever. And sometimes Client just does it better. Sometimes the Frog does it better. So it really depends on your workflow, I guess. You really have to try both out and see which one works well for you. So there is a really cool project in the community last week, which is this running Doom in a PDF, which is a pretty insane thing. Like, how do you even run a game in a PDF file? Like, this was a pretty mind blowing project to me. And from what it seems, it's running a part of Doom compiled using JavaScript code injected into a PDF. I don't know how you can get JavaScript code to run in a PDF, but it just works. So you can actually try it out yourself. The code is fully open source. It's on, I believe it's on the doompdf.dev/doom.pdf. So you can actually play the game itself in the PDF by visiting this link. You can also find this link in our newsletter. All the links will be in our newsletter issue. So it's very cool. I've tried it myself. It was very mind blowing. It's of course it's using the ASCII characters as the display of the screen, and the navigating movements is using a text box which you actually input your commands, like your movement commands, the fire commands into the text box, which it will recognize as commands for the game itself. It's really such a cool project to see something like that. It makes me think like what else can we do like in a PDF if we have something like this now. And on the other hand, we have someone who got Llama to run in a PDF. Like, but this is like some, I don't know, like what the underlying architecture is like somewhat different from the one that works in Doom PDF, because the Doom PDF one works in Chrome, but the Llama one only specifically works in Firefox, which I couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, what makes Firefox so special that it only works in Firefox specifically for the Llama? And I've tried it myself. It's you gotta save this image from this repository. It's completely open source as well. You can try it out. Download the image and rename the file to like a .pdf extension, and you just open it in Firefox and it will work. Just send a message and it should return some sort of response. It's pretty cool that you can actually run an LLM in a PDF. Like, the file itself, it's very small. Like, I think I think it's just a couple of megabytes. From my testing, the response is pretty garbage, and I don't think they specify like the model that they used here, but it's definitely a very small, quantized, and distilled model because the file itself is so small. So maybe if we actually can try, we can probably get like a larger model to run in a PDF. I'm not sure like how it all works. It seems to be using a JavaScript version of Llama CPP to get it to work. And of course, you can just try it out yourself. The links will be in the issue. You can try and see if you can figure out like how they got this to work, because I don't really get how it works. The code is all open source. Try it out yourself, and honestly not much use because the response is so garbage, right? But it shows the potential here that we can actually do all these really cool stuff on our PDF files. And but people will also use this as like a malicious actors will use this as a point of attack, because you can now run JavaScript code locally in a PDF file, which is pretty scary. But nevertheless, pretty cool project to run these things in a PDF file. So Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking has been released, and of course, we know that Google has lagged behind in the AI race at the beginning, but they really seem to have caught up like recently with their latest models like the experimental 1206, their 2.0 Flash Thinking models, because these models are like ranked the top in the LM leaderboards. It's really insane. Like, the most insane thing about these models are that it's completely free. Like, you can use all of these models along with the VS Code extension, the client one, to do all these agentic tools, workflows in your IDE completely for free with that level of performance according to the leaderboard. And it's pretty insane. Like, I believe there's some sort of rate limits, but it's not very difficult to hit those rate limits unless you are really utilizing and milking the API a lot. So really gotta have to take it a try, especially because it's free now. It might be because they are just catching up in the race, and they're just making everything free for everyone to really realize like what Google has on their hands here. Really cool release here. Try it out, especially with Klein. Now we've got another model here called the Sky T1 model, which is a fully open source model with all the data sets, and you can just train your own model. It's a model that's to compete with the O1 preview model from OpenAI. And all of the things are open source. You can literally train your own O1 model right now using this project called Sky T1, because all the steps you need to train the model is all there. It claims to be a competitor to replace an open source competitor for the Sky T1 model, but I've not seen much testing on this, so really gotta try it out, see if it really works. And they claim you can train it under just within $450. Seems promising. We've also got a very big news here. DeepSeek, the Chinese company that released the Sonnet 3.5 competitor last week, the DeepSeek V3. This is the R1, which is the competitor to the OpenAI's O1 model as well. This was such a big news that it literally crashed the US stock markets, like the Nvidia ones. It just shows like they train their models in like under a few $1 million, which OpenAI was using a few $1 billion to train their models, the reasoning models. And that was the reason why like the markets crashed. It showed so much potential in open source models now that anyone can just really host this R1 model locally in their computer. They have released like a couple of distilled models which you can run in your computer up to 1.5 billion parameters. Even on a good phone, you can run this model now. Really, from some of the testing that I saw, it seems really promising for the performance. And some of the use cases, it really exceeds the performance of O1. And the fact that it's actually completely free, you can even use this on their chat platform as well, which is on chat.deepseek.com. And you can use this model completely for free. Whereas in OpenAI, you can only use the O1 models if you are subscribed to the Plus, and there's a very heavy rate limit. I think it's like 10 chat messages a week or something like that. It's heavily rate limited. And if you don't want those rate limits, it will be like a $200 a month pro subscription, which is crazy. People are comparing the 200 subscription model with this completely free, and the performance is on the same level. Like, why would you use OpenAI's ChatGPT reasoning models when you can now use this completely free and open source model, which you can even self-host it? Now the model is MIT licensed, which means you can monetize it however you want, regardless of whatever you want to use this model for, you can just use it. And it's nice to see that the open source models are really not falling far behind, because it's about like a 6 months gap between the frontier models like ChatGPT and these open source models. It's really great that we have all these open source models, that we are not giving this monopoly to these big AI companies to control over the entire AI market. Because the problem is we are going into a future where we really prioritize edge computing for AI, and we are focusing a lot on privacy first, and making sure that all these AI are really for the people, not for those profit sinking companies. And another tool called DeepSeek Engineer to build complete web apps. Like this is like the lovable the bolt.dev app to help you build complete web apps. This also now supports the R1 reasoning model, which definitely you will see a lot better results in building these apps because it has the reasoning capabilities built directly into it now. And you can definitely run all these models in your computer locally using this tool called LM Studio, which is a really nice and easy to use tool for hosting, running all these local models directly on your computer. And it's a really great tool. It supports, I think, one of the smaller distilled models to really get it to run on some of the lower end hardwares. So we also have real-time agents, a starter boilerplate that's released by OpenAI on GitHub, giving this really nice boilerplate for examples on giving tools to agents and the agentic workflow for the real-time API that they have. Good to see how it works using this starter repository if you want to build something similar to this. Not much to say. I've not really tracked it out, but yeah, really good starting point if you want to build something similar to around this real-time concept and especially the agentic approach. Now, the AI SDK has been upgraded to 4.1. The main thing is that it supports image generation, which this is really becoming like the go-to library for building any AI integrations for front-end frameworks. And really nice to see all these really nice updates for free. Really, this SDK is so good that I think it powers most of the AI websites nowadays for streaming the front end. Really, it's really a good library to use if you are building AI apps. It makes it so easy to integrate AI into any app that you want. Definitely, this will definitely become the go-to library for everyone who's building such apps, and it has already been powering a lot of the market right now. Now, Windsurf, the IDE that released by Codium a couple of months back, actually, they just dropped a big update, which is called a Wave 2, and the integrated AI in the IDE can now search the web and automatically generate memories. Now, I can't really recommend how useful the memories are until I have like some testing on it. But I just don't really understand like why would I need these automatic generates memories getting generated, because from what it seems in the promo video that they launched, I just don't really see like what's the use case of it. Like, is this like another marketing thing? Like, they launched this initially because it was like free. This was like the agentic this was like the fully integrated like AI agentic workflow in an IDE itself, which client already existed back then. Like, I couldn't understand why people can't just use client because I felt that it was a lot better. The main problem was you had to pay for the API cost. But in terms of Windsurf, it was completely free when it launched. Like, they gave you access to the Claude 3.5 Sonnet model completely for free until like a certain deadline. They just drop a price tag, and pretty much I think a lot of people stopped using it. But at least for me, I just stopped using it because I don't feel like it's a really nice to use a fully integrated IDE just for that AI workflow. I do find the AI itself, the way they did the prompt engineering on that, pretty nice. It's pretty good at what it should do. And I would say that it on most of the cases it actually outperforms client. But the main problem is they upsell the credits to you, and it's really ambiguous like how they actually charge the credits that they have in their system here. in the ecosystem. And I've seen some confusion as well on the Reddit posts on like how they actually calculate the credits, because there's a bunch of different like types of credits, like the cascade credits, the flow credits, which is a bit confusing, honestly. It's very ambiguous, and if you want to top up, you gotta pay like an upsell credit amount. Then you will actually pay if you would actually just pay for the API itself, when the API is already so expensive. So I've not really used this as much until I've not used this almost at all after they dropped the price tag already. I I think there are still a lot of users who are fans of Windsurf, but personally not really a fan anymore of Windsurf unless they somehow figure out the credit system and make it a lot better and valuable to the user instead. They also have a student pricing plan. They I believe they released it like very recently, but it's only for those email addresses ending in like a .edu, which most school email addresses wouldn't end in that. We don't know when they will launch support for those yet, but for now, it's I don't know. I don't know. Like it doesn't the features that they launch in this update doesn't really entice me to go back to Windsurf, because I just find client too overpowered. That it's essentially pay on what you use, right? Rather than paying a subscription every month, you actually just pay for what you use. So even if you're not doing a lot of coding, like for some months that we are on a holiday, those months you wouldn't be charged like a subscription as usual, because you're not actually not using it at all. And a lot of times it will be cheaper depending on your workflow, because this is calculating based on the credits as well. Definitely, I wouldn't see myself coming back to Windsurf for the time being, unless it's like some very groundbreaking change, especially when we have client and you can just pay for what you use. So not much reason for me to come back to here. And of course, we have another IDE launch this week. It was a new VS Code Frog, I believe. It's fully open source. It's got 8, and I've not tried it myself, but a few people were talking about this, but I've not really seen like anyone actually testing this out. So let me know if you want me to try this out and see how well this works. I think it's something similar to Client as well, but it's again, it's all these AI things integrated into the ID itself, but it has to fork it for some reason. I really just prefer things just integrated into VS Code itself. I don't want to have like 10, 20 IDs installed on my computer and my Mac just to see which one is better. Like, why do I need so many IDs right now? Like, we have an IDE release every single week. It's not even a fully fledged IDE anymore. People are just making forks of VS Code now, and they are just calling it. They're just making it their own and calling it an IDE. And really, the main things people are plugging into these forks are just AI stuff. I really just find it so stupid. There's like no really any reason to do that. I do agree that it gives you more control over like what you can do rather than being restricted to what VS Code wants you to do in terms of like what extensions can do. But I just find it so unnecessary from a user point of view, like a developer point of view. Like, why do I need so many IDEs installed nowadays? Honestly, pretty cool. Especially this is actually in line with the release of the ByteDance IDE as well. We really gotta try it out to really see which one works better. But I just feel like just stick to one thing. Just stop trying out so many new things, and it won't just work fine. Like I feel like client is just too good already at this point. There's like no point in trying like all these new really cool things that don't work. But definitely I'm just very keen to try this out as well. These are just first thoughts that I have from all these really a lot very overwhelming releases of IDs nowadays. Definitely, I will make a video and try these IDs out and see make a comparison of which ones are really worth up to the hype. And keep an eye a lookout for that on my channel. So there is a new repository as a compilation of all the cursor rules. So if you are a cursor fan, you will like this one. It's all the different cursor rule sets that's compiled into this repository. It's called Awesome Cursor Rules. They have support for like so many different frameworks and libraries. It's very comprehensive. So if you are a cursor fan, definitely check it out. I personally don't really like cursor as well. It's such a I don't know. I just find it still very like lacking behind in terms of functionalities. They can like edit files and save by itself. I think that's how it works currently. But from what I used so far, you have to actually specifically specify like which file it has context to. And I just felt like it's so troublesome. Like the chat window should just know like the whole repository, like what the code base is and have context of everything without actually having a human in the loop to tell it like what is actually in the code base. So I don't know much about Cursor, honestly, because it's a lot behind a paywall, like Windsurf as well. So definitely check it out if you're a Cursor friend. It's really one of the early pioneers of these AI integrated features that's beyond GitHub Copilot. So I do give them credit for that. Initially, it was really very hyped because of that. It's a lot better, but now that Klein exists, I feel like it really doesn't really live up to the hype anymore. I just find Klein a lot better than all these really IDE forks. So Grok now also has a fully standalone app. As you know, Grok is a AI model that's by X, which is formerly known as Twitter. Grok is directly integrated into X itself. So if you're on X, you will have access to the Grok for free. But if you don't have an X account, you can also now use the standalone app that is on Grok itself to use Grok. Of course, it will still use the X post for context, but definitely it's a very useful model for really all those real-time events like evolving news and events that's happening in real time. This is a really nice niche that Grok has itself. Now, there's a new project called Agent Recipes, which is a compilation of all the really well-known agentic patterns out there. And I think this is a good start if you are new to agentic patterns here. They have a few really well-known patterns that you can really see how it works in terms of like the flow and the process. They even give you like some sample code which you can try it out yourself. So really cool project of all these really nice agentic workflows, especially because we are moving close to an agentic future. These are really nice to know stuff if you're like an AI developer. Definitely recommend you to check it out. Now, Sona by Perplexity was just released, and this is definitely a really favorite for a lot of people because this is a really nice search engine that has AI integrated into it, and they are releasing this Sonar Pro API here, which integrates search capabilities into the API itself. So when you're calling the API directly, you're actually retrieving results from the AI model itself. We've already integrated such capabilities, and I've not seen anyone testing this yet. So not sure if this is like early access or anything, but this seems promising. Like having all these such things, especially like similar to the Grok stuff, having really real time knowledge to real time events that's happening as we speak is really useful for like AI models. So this also seems like a very promising API, but we really have to see like how capable is it? Like is it really like do we really need this? Like just to have the search capabilities to use this API? Like whether it depends on the project you're building, like whether there is a need for such an API. But definitely a lot of the use case you can just wrap it around your own search engine. So not sure. We will have to see. So Liquid AI is also a really big company, I think. It's just a startup that was really viral last year for really powerful open source models that they released. I think it's a 40 billion parameter model that they released last year. Really nice release here. They just released a 7 billion parameter model. I was also not seeing anyone like testing this. Like, a lot of the things here are like so undercovered, which is the whole point, right? Not seeing anyone testing it. But from its reputation of like the performance that it's delivering for open source, seems promising. This 7 billion parameter model, you can run on like a good, decent computer and definitely have to try it out. I'm not sure if it is like on LM Studio, but we'll have to see and try it out to see whether it really performs to as good as its predecessor models like the 40 billion parameter model. Now, Minimax O1 is also another model release that we have here. I'm really sick of talking about all these models. There's just so many models nowadays. But this is one of the new models that we have this week. Now, Stagehand is a new framework by the browser-based team and it's built on top of browser-based. In case you haven't heard, this is a AI browser, a browser for your AI. And this framework allows you to set up how much control you want to give to your agent because we really are really entrusting a lot of like trust into like AI agents, right? Because have if you want the agents to perform a lot of tasks, being more capable at doing more things, we will have to give them access to more things like running terminal commands, which is a really scary thing to do, especially if you don't know what it's thinking. So in terms of like the web browsing part, this framework is allowing you to give control to that, but it's relying on browser base here, which you have to already be using for this framework to work. So it's not an open source framework as well. I would rather recommend like the Browserless project, which is a fully open source browser for your AI. Definitely, if you want to check this project out, you can as well. It's called Stagehand. And we also have a new framework for synthetic data generation. If you are doing a lot of these synthetic data generations in your workflows by maybe improving all the smaller models on edge computing, this is definitely a great tool to automate it. It seems very promising. Now, it automates the entire generation for you, especially if we know that this data generation is not easy when it's very manual and this framework is there to do that for you. Now we also have a free 4.0 API. So if you are using 4.0 a lot, you can try this out. It's from Moondream, and you simply just get an API key and just hot swap the base URL if you are using the OpenAI package. Just hot swap it with the base URL to the Moondream backend, the endpoint from them. And if you have some sort of increased usage, like you need this a lot, you can request on their Discord for an increased rate limit as well. Now, Sourcebrook is another tool to build, once again, entire web apps with AI. And it's essentially using this thing, what they call as notebooks. So one notebook is essentially an app. So it's like an IDE, but integrated into the front end itself, which is a pretty cool project. You can check it out. Um, it's on the radar. A lot of people were on this, but honestly, I think from what it seems like, Lovable is still like the top pick for a lot of people here. Now we also have a new tool for LLM models. So this essentially generates a very useful and contextual prompt of your entire code base, giving a really nice and informative context for tools like Bolt and Lovable. I've not seen like what is the exact prompt because they don't provide any examples, but I believe you can configure like the specific settings in which what you want to actually generate in the output for the LLM. So pretty useful tool if you have an existing code base already and you want like tools like Lovable and Bolt to improve on them. Now we've got a few papers here, and I really honestly am not a fan of reading papers because the content is like so cluttered. It's not meant for humans to read. I really rather have like a summary of those because it's so much better. Like I just need to know the main point and then what is like the novelty behind it. Everything they cover in the paper is very technical, so I'm usually not very interested in it. So we've got a couple of papers here that's very interesting and it was on the radar. So the first paper is called Titans Learning to Memorize at Test Time. The Google researchers have developed Titans here, which is a new family of neural architectures designed to tackle the limitations of transformers architecture and the other models in handling long-term dependencies and large context windows. So the key innovation here is a neural long-term memory module plugged directly in the model itself that learns to memorize the historical context efficiently, which allows the model to utilize past information while focusing on the current context. Pretty cool paper by the Google researchers here, and it shows some light in the advancements of the transformers architecture that we basically all LLMs are using today. Now, the next paper is called Towards System 2 Reasoning in LLMs, Learning How to Think with Meta Chain of Thought. This is essentially an extension of the traditional chain of thought process because the traditional methods fall short in capturing the non-linear, iterative, latent exploration and verification processes involved in advanced reasoning tasks. So this is to enhance the reasoning capabilities of LLMs by explicitly modeling the underlying reasoning processes, which is similar to reasoning models, processes required for complex problem solving. It's called meta chain of thought and it's incorporating systematic search processes within the model itself, which can be internalized within a single autoregressive model. Now, the pipeline is using a instruction tuning with linearized search traces and reinforcement learning post-training. The next paper, pretty cool. It's called Transformers Squared, and this is by a company called Sakana. It's a Japanese company who published a viral paper called the AI Scientist last year. Now, they published another mind-blowing research on self-adaptive LLMs that rethinks, once again, rethinks the Transformers architecture that all models are fundamentally relying upon today. Now, because we realized that inference time scaling is really significantly increasing the performance of LLMs, but we will definitely still eventually hit a limit. So this is all these looks into the underlying architecture is really a good step ahead into really unleashing the real potential of LLMs because we will no longer be locked and constrained to the architecture anymore once we have some breakthroughs on the architecture itself. Now, the last paper that I have here is a paper that can predict your brain activity of the next 5 seconds just based on 21 seconds of MRI data. Pretty cool, but I think it's just a really just conceptual. If you're interested, check the paper out in the issue as well. Now, moving on to the grid, this is a space where we share all the design stuff and news, and definitely things that you can use as our designers. So, the talk of the town ChatCN UI, a very clean interface for building a very clean library for building user interfaces in React, Next.js, and some of the other front end frameworks. The great part about this is the reverse extraction part. All of the components are fully customizable. It's built on top of this component library called Radix. Now, changing the behavior styling is completely up to you because of the very little abstraction other than the Radix layer. So they won Project of the Year 2 years in a row, which is pretty incredible because it's it's as if like almost every new website today is like using this as the underlying like component library nowadays. And it's becoming a bit like everyone is just using this, and I'm not seeing like a lot of ways to like style it from the default template that it's providing. So nevertheless, the base template is very clean and definitely very usable in building really clean interfaces. So nothing to complain about that. But it's just that a lot of websites are becoming very similar. It's like the Bootstrap templates. It's so recognizable. You go to a Bootstrap website, you can instantly recognize that website is just using Bootstrap. And it's now becoming this as well. You go to any website, you can instantly recognize that this website is using ShadCN UI. So since a while back, they also added a grid layout to the documentation side, which is a very nice and clean style that we are actually, it's a design pattern that it's trending lately. Now, especially because we are going for like a borderless kind of trend as well. A lot of people are removing borders to make it even cleaner, and the fact that we are integrating this really grid bordered, you overusing a lot of borders everywhere, it's surprisingly very clean as well. And Vercel actually started this bordered trend with this the use of borders everywhere, and it's so clean, so organized. And when they used it in the landing page, that I might actually use something like that as well. Really very nice, clean, and touch up to the documentation side for ShadCN UI. Now, this project also inspired a lot of similar libraries like React Area, which is by Adobe here. So this reverse extraction has really changed the entire front end framework design world, where we are not essentially shipping all these user interface as libraries that's locked behind packages, but rather a component that you can easily customize yourself from just editing the code in the code base, because it's completely not abstracted for you. Now we also have a really nice gallery of hero components that's from a lot of websites. So a lot of these heroes are really nice, and it's in this gallery called Superhero. Now it's completely free, and if you just need inspirations of like making your hero section for your next landing page, your next project, this is definitely a good place to go, because it's a compilation of all these hero sections, and you will definitely find something that will inspire you there. Now, speaking of ShadCN again, we have this new library called Hooks CN. So if you need hooks, this is again built on top of the concept of ShadCN. Just simply install them from the CLI to use them. And this is a compilation, a library, a list of very useful pre-made hooks that you can use. Now, we also have Prism UI, which they just really recently released a full template for a landing page using the Prism UI components. Again, this is another library that's built on top of the ShadCN style. Definitely check it out if you need a landing page. Now, I found this really nice library that has a very reactive and animated library of components to really make your landing page and website look 10 times better. It's so good. The animations are so good. The components are so reactive. And I just can't believe this exists and it's for free. It's called React Bits. Definitely check it out if you want something more, one more life into your landing pages. Now, Reese UI, another UI library, is in town. 40 plus production ready components. It's built with Tailwind CSS, of course. Check it out. Another really nice library that you can use for your next project. Now, if you are building a website like a multiplayer that requires some sort of collaboration or some social media that you need mention people, now we have a mention component by Setman here. Really nice component. It's building the abstracting the mentioning part into a text field. And not I've not seen like how the API works yet, but it seems really nice to be built on top of the shared CN concept here. So definitely everything is customizable. So definitely check it out if you're building something like that. And onboarding is crucial to any platform at all, especially SaaS products that have really complicated user interfaces. A tour component will help you do that by creating guided tours for your new users to onboard them quicker so that they can get around, know what's each of the elements and buttons in your website the dashboard does. So this tour component really useful, and the API is so clean. Just drop in, it's like a JSON, I believe, of the different elements, and you just target the ID of the element that you want to highlight and just drop in the text in the text box with the heading and the message that you want to show them. And it's such a clean API that extracts the tour feature that will help to onboard your users. Now, there is a library called NextUI, which was one of the early competitors. I wouldn't say it's a competitor, but like a alternative to Shatian UI, which is built on top of the same concept, the zero abstraction concept as Shatian UI, and but they have like some sort of twist to it. It's they have their components was a lot more reactive. For example, like checkboxes, there would be like a very nice animation to it as compared to like the Shatian ones, which aren't really that animated. So this was a really early library back then. Like it's an alternative to Shadcn, and it was very clean as well. Like it's built on the same design system, but it just adds the very subtle animations to each component, and it just makes it so clean and a lot nicer. And it's a very nice to have improvement on the UI part. So they recently renamed to Hero UI, so definitely check it out. It's completely free as well. I believe they have like some paid templates, but definitely most of the components should be free. Check it out if you are a user as an existing fan or user of the Shetian UI. Maybe you can try this out for your next project, something new and different from what everyone else is using rather than the Shetian UI. Now, we also have Tailwind blocks. This is a great list of pre-built landing page components for Tailwind. It's the same concept again, copy and paste components for Tailwind. Now, it's all landing page, so if you are building a landing page, definitely this one will be a cool one to check it out. Now, this is an insane launch. It's called 21st Dev. It's a very huge library of all the different ShadCN UI inspired components all in one place. This is such a useful tool and it's completely for free. So it's like a whole compilation and whole gallery of all the different components from the different creators that created components built on top of the ShadCN style, which is the copy and paste, the zero extraction style, easy to install from the CLI. All this is now in one place called 21st Dev. Definitely check it out if you are building a website on the Shadcn UI nowadays, because you don't even need to navigate between a lot of different sites now. This is compiling a lot of very useful components, especially landing page components. Very nice components that are very reactive, animated, and there's even like 3JS, 3D kind of components for the landing page as well. Now, we also have awesome Shadcn UI here, and if that wasn't enough, this is literally everything that's related to Shadcn UI in this directory. So it's everything that you need, every component, everything is compiled in this place called awesome Shadcn UI. Definitely check it out if you are building a project for your next project. I bet you this is the most useful thing that you'll come across. Now we also have a nice library of symbols for your next project. This is an alternative to the default one to that Shadcn UI uses, which is Louis Site Dev. Now, this is an alternative for that. Definitely just check it out if you need more icons for your next project. Then we also have a nice pack of hand-drawn emojis and whirls for your landing page at a small price of $4. Not sponsored. I just decided to feature this because I saw it on Twitter. Now, very nice, subtle touch to your landing pages for a small cost. We also have cool shades here, and this one is free. Now, it's a collection of very nice premium looking shapes, which are like gradient. They have like stars. They have this like, how do you call this? Like a Gemini, the Google Gemini kind of star. And they have so many variations. They have like flowers. Everything is like so nicely gradient. The color is like so nice that you want to put it on your landing pages. Definitely check it out. It's completely free. They even have a Figma file for it. You can easily install it using the npm package. So we also have this project called HandKit here, which is a library of holographic ghost style gestures for landing pages as well. And you can probably use this as like placeholder images as well. Really nice. It's also $4 as well for Figma, but it's not released yet. It's on pre-order. Looks really cool, like having all these hand gestures in like a holographic format, and it's available in a couple of colors as well. Now, I came across really nice portfolio here by this user called Yi Yang, and it's a really nice like video background of like a sky that's rotating, and the color is just so nice. I just had to feature it. It's such a nice and clean portfolio here, but when I visited the website, it's a bit different, so I think he did change it. But definitely, it's so cool to see a portfolio using like a video background as as the background of their portfolio, and they're just using like a wall of text to introduce themselves, and just that's just a single page of their portfolio. It's so clean and so simple and minimal. Now, moving on to the spotlight here, we have GitHub Wrapped, which is like a Spotify Wrapped, but for GitHub. So I actually generated mine, and I'm actually in the top 2% of GitHub in terms of like the commits, and I think it's like based on the activity and streaks as well. And definitely check it out. Go and generate your own GitHub Wrap and see how you performed last year. Now, T-Table. T-Bow is an alternative to Airtable. Great open source project to self-host your own Airtable, and it looks pretty clean. The UI is very clean. Definitely check it out if you're considering Airtable, especially because it's such a steep price. A lot of the things you can just find alternatives like this to self-host, and it will definitely save you a lot of cost in the long run. Now, Deepface is a new, not sure if it's new, but I think it's new, a face recognition library for Python. And they claim to be quite accurate from the benchmarks they produce in their repository here. It's pretty accurate, but I'm not too sure like what is the use case for this, like other than like identity verification. So if you can think of any, like let me know what you can use this library for other than like identity verification, because I wouldn't trust to use this like for authentication, because I don't think it's that secure if you want to use something like this for facial authentication. But you can definitely integrate it as part of your authentication flow, as one of the steps of one of the ending steps to recognize the user's face. Definitely, you can use this standalone to unlock and authenticate users on behalf on to replace traditional things like password, emails, 2FAs, multi-factor authentications. Now, a new visual code builder for Tailwind Code is available soon by this company called Reweb. And in fact, that's the name of the tool. It's called Reweb. And it's a visual builder for these Next.js and Tailwind. And I believe it's like built on top of Shadcn UI as well. So it's a visual editor for Shadcn UI components. Pretty cool project. Definitely check it out. Hopefully it will be quite a reasonable pricing and maybe open source as well. Not too sure. Now, we also have a new self-hostable enterprise rack system that's on GitHub. And this, everyone has been talking about this, like you can actually host your own enterprise grade rack on your system now. But I'm not too sure like how well built it is because I don't think like many people have like analyze the repository itself in terms of like how it works, but definitely seems promising. You can do try it out and see how well it works. I don't think it integrates like different features like re-ranking and the contextual rec that Claude is using in this project here. Now, this is a very useful tool. It's called Cloud Compare that lets you compare different cloud providers, and people are moving towards self-hosting a lot more nowadays, especially that there's so much surprise bills from the cloud providers, and people are just figuring out like how to self-host. And this is a good starting point in terms of figuring out like which provider is actually better for you depending on your use case and your budget. Now, I really wish we had something like this back then because I just had so many trial and error trying so many different hosting providers myself to find the best one. And I believe it aligns with like the some of the providers that's listed on here. Now, the from the ones I tried, the ones who work best is OVH and Hetzner. And I feel like the whole VH support isn't really there because you are waiting for like a 2-3 day response if you are opening a ticket to them. Contabo is really affordable, but they have really very frequent maintenance downtime. And it's good if you are actually not running any mission critical service on running on it. It's good. It's so cheap. They are offering like so generously, but it's just that the downtime is just not it. Now, Upscale is not new, but I never knew they have like a Windows version to it. So I think they maybe just added like a Windows support recently. I've used the Mac version. It's pretty good. It's a fully local and offline open source free image upscaler. Now, I definitely recommend. There's so many upscaling like tools out there on the web, but is locked behind a paywall. So this is a very nice alternative that you can just do it locally on your computer. Now, we also have a really interesting project here. It's called Map of GitHub, and it's by Navaka. No, it's like a kind of like a visual representation of like what kind of projects are taking up most of GitHub right now. And it seems to be like mostly front end and AI. Really cool project to see like the world or the universe of GitHub in like a map form. Really cool project. Check it out. And that's all for the news this week. This was a very long podcast. We are about 2 hours in now. Hopefully, the upcoming podcast will not be this long, especially if we are doing this like on a weekly basis. This is a bit difficult to do like a 2 hour recording every week. All right. So if you want more, you can check out our Update Night newsletter. All of the things that we mentioned here will be in the newsletter as well for this week's news that we are covering here. Check it out. I think because this is such a long video, such a long podcast, we will not delve into the other personal stories in this week's podcast. Maybe we'll cover it in another week instead. We will see how it goes because this week is just too long. This week's personal stories experiences sharing has already been shared on my YouTube channel and the Update Night newsletter as well. So definitely check it out. This is it. Thank you for listening. If you're still listening up to this point, thank you so much for listening. This was a very long recording for me. 2 hours in. Hopefully we can keep it short the next few weeks. There's just so many news this week that we have to cover. And there's just so many things that is developing every week. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope you have a good the rest of your day.